Hi, and welcome to the Bold Leadership Story Show, where we talk about experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today, I've got the honor of speaking with Jim McLaughlin. And Jim's an amazing guy. I've known Jim for a number of years. I appreciate his friendship, and I'm really honored that he's joining me on my show today. Let's talk about. I'm going to introduce Jim here. His mission is to positively impact performance in all areas of business and life, and to elevate or upgrade the conversations in organizations, to have people talking more about what's possible and less about what's wrong. I love that. He stands for a world in which people are connected, compassionate, and creative. His values are reliability, leadership, commitment, compassion, integrity, and harmony. Wow, those are all things I aspire to as well. And his top 5 strength themes are responsibility. He's a learner. He's restorative. I'd like to explore what that is. Communication and input. Jim's got a great experience, a very diverse background, includes oil exploration. He was a geologist for a number of years. He's been in software development, corporate training and performance support, project management, and land development. So he's kind of a left brain and right brain guy all at the same time. It's a rare combination, and definitely has impacted his life in being able to manage those two things, I think, in really great ways. Education, he's received a Master of Business Administration, or MBA, in San Diego State University, also a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Pacific, and did some postgraduate work at 2 universities, California State, Northridge, and Los Angeles. And this is the exciting part for me. Jim is active in his community as a volunteer for Boy Scouts of America. He's been doing yeoman's work there. And then he's a board member of the Economic Development Coalition. He's co-founder and 12-year member of Twin Cities Business Leaders Toastmasters Club. And since 2012, he's been licensed to organize and produce TEDx Temecula, a locally organized TED event that's always a highlight here in the city. So Jim, welcome to the show, and glad you're here. So what's new in your life right now, Jim McLaughlin? What's going on?
Oh, wow. Well, first, thank you, Jim, for inviting me to be part of this. I'm excited to be talking to you about all manner of things. We'll see what shows up. I could talk quite a bit about what you said in the introduction, and maybe we'll touch on many of those things throughout this conversation. But you asked the question, what's new and what's up? Well, I guess one of the things that's up right now is TEDx Temecula, which is an event mentioned in the introduction that I started in 2012. And how that happened was I'd been living here for a few years, I think about 3 years at that point, and had just started to get to know the community. I moved up here from San Diego, and this is kind of a small town compared to San Diego. We've got maybe 250,000 people here in the stone's throw, and a lot more down in San Diego. Before that, I lived in Orange County. Before that, Los Angeles. So anyway, so I really had an opportunity to get to know the community, and then I learned that that TED had this program called TEDx, that somebody in the community could organize an event like that.
And back then, this was like nobody really knew what TEDx was, right?
Something like that. I would do
Now you have
informal
to be literally under a rock to not know what TEDx is.
Exactly. Yeah, I would do informal polls back then and ask audiences, groups, who's ever heard of TED Talks? And I think it was about 40%, about 4 out of 10 people would say they'd heard of it. Now it's ubiquitous.
Well, there's some vision there. Just putting together this saying, oh, yeah, I want to try.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's really what it was. It was that for me, I mean, it was the power of vision. It was really, having that idea. I remember just reading about it and going, oh, it was kind of 2 parts to this. One was I want to live in a community that has something like that going on, because I've seen TED Talks and thought they were cool. And what would it look like to do that? So next thing I knew, I was filling out an application, and here it is, well, this will be our 12th year. And so we're just starting the process of putting together what this year is going to look like. And it's in September, and so we start in January working on it and
It's a
putting everything
long
together.
process. I've talked to several people now that are TEDx speakers.
Yeah.
In fact, on this show, and and they always say that it was an amazing experience. I recommend it for everybody to do, and just do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's remarkable. It's, it's all volunteers. I don't make a nickel on it. It's not allowed by TED rules. Speakers don't make anything. It's all, it's and it came out of my mission, to elevate or upgrade the level of conversation happening in my communities. And it was really just like 2 months before that, before January 2012, when I decided to get the license, that I sort of articulated that mission. It came out of a moment where somebody said something, and I go, oh yeah, that's what I'm about. That's what my mission is. It's really about the community and about elevating or upgrading the conversation. And then what's TEDx? Well, it's a conversation, really. We have 6 or 8 speakers every year, 6 to 8 speakers every year, and they're talking about something that maybe has never been talked about before, or not talked about in that particular way. And that kind of conversation just opens up something for people, and the enthusiasm and the energy, whatever that is, of having 300 people all together listening to a talk like that, of that person right in front of you. And these aren't professional speakers. These are just people like you and me. And we work with them quite a bit to help them craft and hone their talk and work on their presentation skills a little bit. But when you're talking about something that you're passionate about, you don't need to be a great speaker, because it's that, your own natural enthusiasm and energy comes out. And that's really what people connect with. I'm sure you've seen speakers that were, super slick and highly polished and all that. And while you may have been in awe of them, did you really connect, or were you just like watching a performance?
Right.
But when you see somebody being really authentic and just speaking from their own experience without maybe a lot of polish, it just feels more, I don't know. I don't mean to make comparisons here, but that's the kind of result that we have. And we love it so much. We want to keep doing it again and again, even though there's no money to be made in it. It's not about that.
It's not always all about the money, and it's that there's a lot of value, I think, in the aspect, as you said, the community, and bringing the community. And it's not just Temecula, because those ideas then get recorded and they go on to YouTube or wherever, and those little speeches, some of them get hundreds of millions of views, and they make a huge impact in the world.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's that venue that creates that, the TEDx formula. And it's talking to some of the TEDx speakers. I mean, they say, I've done tons of speeches all over the place. I do, 100 speeches a year. The TEDx one was the most grueling. It took me 7 months to prepare, and that kind of thing. So but they said, with that said, it was so worth it. And even though they didn't get paid for it, their personal growth, and they're all people, I've noticed, leaders all want to become something better, something bigger, to add more value to, and be better people, and so that's part of it as well, is facing your fears. And
yeah, to me, the fears are part of it, right? But it's having something that's bigger than that, right? It's about, that vision, about, just doing the 10X event. Now, many years ago, before I really started engaging in the work that I'm doing now professionally, I wouldn't be caught dead on a stage. I wouldn't be caught dead in front of a microphone and 300 people. No way. It was just not going to happen.
Yeah, your background is engineering. You're, the geologist. You're out in the field. You maybe talk to one person a week when you're out there, right? and it's like
something like that.
I mean, getting in front of a crowd and wanting to say something.
Yeah, part of our, you might say maybe it's obvious, right? That our personalities kind of determine what fields we go into.
Sure.
Or maybe it's not our personality, but it's our relationship with ourselves, right? We might think of ourselves
Well
as
said. Yeah.
technical, and we might think of ourselves as this way and that way. And a lot of that's based upon, well, it's all based on, well, in large part, it's based upon our own life experiences, what we learned and what we tried and what didn't work and what worked and what other people tell us and what our culture tells us and what our parents tell us have a lot to do with like and our own internal dialogue or monologue, I guess, that we have going on about who we are and what we're good at and what we're not good at and what we should stay away from. And my work is about really looking at that and challenging that and going, is that really true? Or is it something that I've just sort of hung on to? Maybe I heard it, maybe it was a decision I made at one point that I'm just not that kind of a person.
Hmm.
And as a result of that, there are doors that aren't open. And you don't even see the doors, right? It's not that they're there and they're closed, you don't even see them. Right now, in the case of public speaking, that's probably something that a lot of people are familiar with because the opportunity presents itself throughout life, whether it was in school or whether it ends up being part of what you do professionally. And that may just be giving presentations to the board or to the executives or or to your team members. And that can
Hmm.
be very, very intimidating. And by looking at, well, what's available to me by doing that, and having that be something that lives for you, or you have a vision for it, a vivid picture of what that would be like. For example, here's one from probably about 15 years ago. uh, I had heard about this class. It's called Finding Your Voice. And what
Okay.
you do, it's like an 8-week program, and you pick a song and then you learn how to sing it, and then you sing it in front of an audience of 200 people. And when I first, right? Yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
That's exactly what I thought when I first heard about it. It's like,
I'd rather do a TEDx than that.
I'd rather do just about anything. My question was, in my head, it's like, why would anybody do that? Now, of
Well,
course, I know there are people that
there are
enjoy
people,
that kind
yeah,
of
some
thing,
people are really good
but
at
my
that.
my first thing was, like, what? Why would I don't, I don't even sing in the shower. I don't ever, ever, ever sing. It's not like, oh, I wish I could sing because, maybe I have a good, nothing like that ever crossed my mind. And then
Right.
one day I thought, what would it be like having done that? Like, what would it be like to have gone through that experience and be on the other side? And that was sort of a game changer for me. Just that recognition of, what, I never really thought deeply about what it would be like to be on the other side of that fear. You said conquering your fears.
Mm,
Usually our attention is on the fear, right?
right.
That gets all the attention. Well, if that gets all the attention, then you're kind of stuck with it, right? But if you think about, like, well, what would be on the other side of that? What could be on the other side of that? What would make it worthwhile? And, otherwise that's a door you never get to walk through. You never get to see what's on the other side of it. You never get to see what's going to show up.
Mm,
When you start to go down that road, or mixing my metaphors here, but when you start to explore, like, what am I afraid to do? What am I unwilling to do? What have I convinced myself that's I'm not that kind of a person?
mhm.
Or whatever, whatever's in that category. We all have our own different language, our own different thoughts about, our what we're good at and what we're not so good at.
Right.
We start to explore, and, this is, to me, this is leadership. And when I think of leadership, it all starts right here, right at home, like, uh, leading my own life, leading, and by extension, my family, right? Or
Mhm.
my community, whatever dimension there is. But to the extent that um, I can get out into that unknown, because to me, that's in large part what leadership is. It's being in the unknown, not knowing how it's going to turn out, maybe not having a roadmap, but still being powerful in the face of it, because you have a vision of what it will be like to accomplish that, to be successful in your business, to get your business to that next level. Even though, my tagline is, I help business owners get off the treadmill and go somewhere. right? It's really
Okay.
easy to
Yeah.
stay on that treadmill because the treadmill works, right? I'm getting stuff done, it's good, it's happening. And, but, the view doesn't change very much on
I'm
the
gonna
treadmill.
share a screen here.
At some level, it might get a little bit boring, right? It might get, sometimes we yearn for more in life,
Right.
right? And then we get to the edge of our comfort zone. And then, we go out there a little bit and it's like, oh, that wasn't meant to be. Or we have, our rationalizations and justifications for staying put. And there's nothing wrong with it, right? Because life is good. Life is great. It's not perfect, but we're successful, right? We're successful at the level that we are, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we hadn't achieved a level of success in our lives, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, you've gone through, I would think, some kind of crucible. You're a technical guy. You know what a crucible is, and you've had
Oh yeah,
chemistry class, right? So a
yes.
crucible is like a little vessel, a jar that's made of porcelain. It can stand a lot of heat and pressure. And so you would do a little experiment in that crucible, and you might put some chemicals in there and an enzyme to accelerate the process, the chemical reaction, and maybe some heat and pressure to make it work to get the outcome you're looking for. And so what was the crucible you had to go through, and what were the pressures and enzymes that were associated with your kind of metamorphizing from the nerd geologist engineer into this, TED Talk master in a town of 250,000, 300,000 people. Uh, what was your crucible?
Oh my gosh. Well, there were several. And but you bring up a good point, and I'm familiar with that term, the crucible event.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that under, heat and pressure. And I love it. I hadn't thought about it this way before, but you used the word metamorphose. I mean, that's what metamorphic rock is. It's rock that's been subjected to
Okay.
tremendous
Speaking your
pressure
language.
and or heat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's metamorphosed into another kind of rock. Marble is a metamorphic rock. It's
Okay.
limestone that has been subjected to heat and pressure,
Right.
and it turns into
Diamonds.
marble. And
Yeah.
wow, marble's a lot prettier than limestone. Most people seem to think. Anyway, so what was it? Well, it was many. It's anything in life that you're going down, you're cruising along, and then suddenly something happens, and what you well, here I'll say it in the language that I use now, in sort of the technical language of my work, and it's not too technical, but um, it's as though the future you were looking forward to no longer exists. And it kind of points to how important the future is to us.
Wait a minute. Let me wrap my head around that.
Yeah, good.
It's as though the future you were hoping for does not exist.
Does not exist anymore. It's like
Is
it's taken away from you. So think of a loss, right? You've lost something. You've lost a loved one. You've lost a job,
hmm.
right? Now that's probably one that most people can relate to, is the
Okay. Yeah,
loss of a
I can
job.
relate to
You
that
can
one.
relate to that,
That
right?
one sometimes
So,
that
you're
stings.
cruising along, you're doing really well, and maybe you didn't see it coming, or you certainly didn't expect it to happen when it happened, right?
Right.
What happens? Well, you are then left with now what? And sometimes in not so pretty language,
Right.
right? And so let me be so it's like that. So we go through life expecting the sun to come up tomorrow, for tomorrow to be pretty much like today, except slightly different. And I don't mean like we're consciously recognizing this. It's just what's going on in the background. It's sort of it's part of our operating system. You might say it that way,
Right.
is because our brains like things to be predictable, right? They don't have to, it's less stressful
Well,
for our
yeah, they
minds.
want your brain's there to help protect you and make your life,
It's there to have you
not,
survive.
it's not there to help make your life
Bigger.
super successful. It's just there to keep you alive.
Exactly. No, that's its job, is survival. And
Yeah.
so it's always looking for threat.
Right.
It's always looking for, what's gonna damage me, either physically, which is pretty rare these days. That do we really ever come under any real physical threat to our
Yeah.
lives?
I take a walk in the morning and I do a little, I go by the creek and it happened to me. I was walking along as the morning is really, the birds are flying around. I could hear them chirping. I was in my little moment walking along and there right by the trail is a row of houses with fences and walking along and this dog just out of the blue. I just
Mm.
and I could feel the cortisol. And my left leg lifted up like, get your butt out of here, because you're gonna get eaten. And it all happened so quick. And then, within a nanosecond, my logical brain kicked in and said, wait, oh, the dog's behind a fence. If the fence is there, you're fine, just relax. But it took me like 10 minutes for my heart to go back.
Oh yeah. No, you're
So
absolutely right. I hadn't
that's
thought
a
about
real
that.
thing. I mean, it happens, but these days having a dog tear your leg off right now is probably not going to happen.
But it does point to that is a real fear for your life
Yeah.
in that moment. I hadn't considered that. I have a couple of my own that are just like that. Yeah, one involves coyotes, like a pack of coyotes. That was a little
Yeah.
bit
That's intimidating.
after dark. I
Ooh.
was not in my element. I was in
Yeah,
theirs.
you become part of the food chain. It's like,
Exactly, right?
no,
The circle of
I'm
life,
not
right?
going down this way.
But there was one instance that really kicked it all off for me, and that was being laid off from a job, like I mentioned.
Right.
And I was kind
Okay.
of okay with that. Like, okay, it's just, it's time for me to look around. It was the midlife, scenario there. And I wasn't really happy where I was, but I also didn't have the guts to make a change.
Okay.
And so that was a little bit of how I kind of rationalized it was I'd gotten laid off and then 2 months later, my wife left me. That's not really an accurate way to say it, but my marriage was over. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And that was like a 1-2 punch. And
Yeah.
part of the job thing, I knew I could get another job. It was really a matter of what do I want to do now? Do I want to stay in that profession? Do I want to do something different? So I was cool. I was like chilling and and thinking about and ready for whatever was next. But when it looked like I wasn't going to be my life partner anymore, we weren't going to grow old together. That then became like that experience of there's like it was like looking out at the horizon and it
Mm.
just cracks and then all shatters and
Uh-huh.
there's nothing there. So it was like everything that I counted on, I could no longer count on. Like
Right.
the future that I had imagined was gone.
Okay.
And I would and with that comes fear, uncertainty, what is going to happen, and of course all of my my self-esteem issues or whatever, all my doubts. How am I ever going to find somebody like that again? I was not just um, you know introverted. I was shy, right?
Mm.
I was lucky. I felt lucky to find my first wife, right? Like really like and it wasn't like
Even
I
a
settled
blind
either.
squirrel gets lucky once in a while, finds a nut once in a while.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was just, the world I sort of inhabited that's not going to happen again. And so it just, it was the big, I'm a loser kind of thing. But so that just came to the foreground
Yeah.
of,
And
of
those
and
thoughts manifest into reality pretty quick.
yeah, yeah. And so, that got me on the road to, all right, whatever strategies I had developed for getting through life are bankrupt, right? Or
Okay.
they're either used up or they were built on a house of cards or whatever it might be. And I started engaging in the personal development world.
Okay.
And really, probably the simplest way for me to put it is I started living my life on purpose rather
Okay.
than rather than making the best of what came along. Now, there's room for both, and there's times where, there's a balance there, right? But I really started looking at, like I said, about the future, like creating a future, like
Mm.
imagining a future, like what do I really want to have for my life? What would it be like? Well, I was clear I wanted to be in marriage again. I
Yeah.
I, I love like it's not so much the security of it, because, one of my favorite quotes is security is mostly a superstition. It does not, yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's Helen Keller.
so
Security is
true.
mostly a superstition. It does
Yeah.
not exist in nature. And then it goes on to say, and she wraps it up with, life is either a daring adventure or nothing.
Mm,
So which are you going to choose, right? So,
right.
but going back to, I really, I learned, I was taught, I explored, what would it be like to actually live my life like going for what I wanted? I know this sounds elementary, but each of us, I think, has in us areas that we're not used to exploring. We're not used to, but we've just sort of settled for it, or we take it for granted, meaning we don't even think about it. That's just the way it is. That's just the way we are, the way I am. And
Mhm.
and so my work really is about getting beyond that, looking beyond that to see what's there. That, the more we can each of us express who we are. And by express, I mean, make something real in the world that wasn't going to happen anyway, right? Like, we're all here to serve, right? We're all here to serve each other. We're a tribal species. We don't live in isolation. We are never meant to live in isolation. We thrive because we make a contribution to the whole. Otherwise,
Mhm.
what happens when you're no longer a contribution to the tribe? You get banished, right? And then you're out, and then you get to meet those coyotes or worse,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, yeah, so that was really the event. It was sort of the 1-2 punch, and that
Okay.
really had me, really examine, what am I doing with my life, and where can I go from here? And so I, became familiar with the set of tools that I'm now using in my work to, create that vision, create the future. How we say it is, you actually create the future. You're actually creating the future, whether you're conscious of it or not, right?
Yeah.
Because whatever it is that you're afraid of, right, whatever it is that you're avoiding, right, is always going to be there for you to be afraid of and to avoid. So your life is going to be a function of that reality, right? That way of looking at the world, that way of being in the world. And so, it's like, well, am I really like the singing class? Am I really willing to let that stand in the way of what might be a really cool experience?
Mm.
And it was, by the way.
I saw on your website, you put a great little video together and you talk about your college buds and you go out camping
Oh,
every year you're perennially you'd be the last one in the water because it was, you perceived it as cold, but finally you decided to take a chance and jump in and experience that just for the sake of experiencing.
yeah.
And now it's like an annual thing you do to jump in the water first and have that thrill of 36-degree water.
Yeah. 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 It was very similar experience. Is like, what would it be like? What it would be like to be submerged in water that's too cold, right? Knowing that my survival isn't really at stake here,
Yeah,
just my
no real
comfort.
risk, but it's just going to be uncomfortable. But is that, what's that experience look like? Is it uncomfortable? How do you know? You perceive it as being uncomfortable right now, but when you do it, maybe it's not.
Well,
And
and,
maybe
and it
there's
really,
health benefits and all this, you look into it and say, wow, that could be really good for me.
yeah. 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 It was really about, am I willing, and it continues to be, am I willing to be stopped? Is there, am I willing to not open that door, right? Like, and under what circumstances, right? I guess, there's always those doors maybe we don't want to open, but really, am I unwilling to look? Is there really any danger? In that case, is there really any, why am I, what am I, and this, has me reflect back on sort of my whole life, is look at all the places that I said, no, not for me.
Mm,
And look, I have no regrets. Let me make that really clear. I have no regrets about any of the decisions I made in my life. And I've worked on well, I've like that. There's no room for regret in my life. That's how I have it. Is if I discover a regret, I'm like, what do I need to do to deal with that? Because that's toxic. We know this, right? Grudges, regrets, resentments, no space. I provide no space for those in my life. When they come up, I do what I need to do to get rid of it, to not dwell on that. Um, but um, I look back really with just, well, what would it be like to have done that? Like I said, what would it be like to be on the other side of that? Just to why? What just to create a rich life and be able to have experiences that I don't know, that just make life versus
Yeah.
being on the treadmill.
Yeah, or being in front of a 300 people talking to TED Talk, it's like, and you're not getting paid for that. It's like, but
It's an experience.
it's
Yeah.
an experience.
And it's a shared experience. That's what's so great about TEDx.
Yeah.
It's an experience. I mean, I MC it, so I'm pretty prominent. And a lot of people come up and talk to me after the event, certainly the speakers
Sure.
as well. And they're just, they're like, wow, I had no idea. It's like, yeah, that's what's so great. And that's what it's like when you get outside your comfort zone. That's what it's like when you start to look for those doors that, you didn't even know were closed to you because you never even really noticed them. And then you have the courage to go, well, what would it be like? What would it be like to have that happen?
It's a great question.
And
What would
and
you like?
outside those doors, I say that your comfort zone, I don't really use that term, but it's just familiar. Your comfort zone is defined by what you know, right? It's what you know about yourself, what you know about life, what you know from school, what you know from your experiences.
Hmm.
It's what's familiar to you. That's
Sure.
what it is, right? And so anything outside of that is just unfamiliar. And if it's unfamiliar, you're going to have things happen that are like you never even imagined can happen.
Right.
That's the beauty of it. Or that's the joy of it for me. I have two mastermind groups I'm doing right now. Just started a new one at the beginning of the year. And
Hmm.
people are saying, you won't believe what happened. Or I never saw this coming. I said, yeah, that's what it's like. That's what you're in for, just to have those, to bring wonder back into your life like you did when you were a kid. Everything was amazing as a kid,
Right.
right? Because everything was brand new and there were no limitations. To be able to bring that back after becoming sort of a baked, hardened adult, right? Where, oh yeah, we got it all figured out. I got it all figured out. I know how to get through life and blah, blah. We've got all of our strategies figured out, but to really like look and explore what else is out there. And I don't mean like, well, I do. I mean, in every area of your life, like I said in the introduction, but in the context of business, oh my gosh, where do you stop in business? Where are you unwilling to go? What are the conversations you're afraid to have?
Mm.
What are you afraid to, where are you afraid to rock the boat? Because sometimes the boat needs rocking, right? Because
Yeah,
something gets
that's a
stuck.
big
Sometimes,
one. I've run into that one myself
yeah. How do you
many
stay
times.
relevant? That's a question everybody needs to be asking themselves. How am I staying relevant? What am I paying attention to? What am I not paying attention to?
Oh, especially today, things are changing so
Oh,
quick.
oh yeah. Over the last 3 years, I mean, it's a different world we're living in many ways. We
From
all know
yesterday.
this, right? And for some of it's better, and for some of it's not so much better,
Right.
right? But we all know this. Times of tremendous change are also times of tremendous opportunity,
Exactly.
right? These disruptive technologies, disruptive events in business, and just as they are in nature,
Yeah.
they're the fertile ground for new life, for new invention, for new discoveries to be made. It's when
Mm.
everything is just devastated that we have the opportunity for new growth. This goes back, the mass extinction events, going back to my geology background. It's common I would say knowledge that a meteor hit the earth and blackened the skies and cooled the earth and wiped out all the dinosaurs, right?
Hmm.
And well, that wasn't the only event that there were several that happened throughout Earth's history that wiped out all the species. Well, guess what? There was a period of flourishing right afterwards, right? And we are the beneficiaries. Mammals then took over the world, not
Right.
reptiles. So
Yeah. Cool stuff. So, gosh, the time goes by so fast. I've got one. You got time for one more question?
oh, absolutely, yes. I'm
All
all
right,
yours.
great. Uh, you've made decisions throughout the course of your life for various things in your leadership life, various places you've been. And looking back, what was the number one boldest decision that you made, and what were the consequences of that?
The boldest decision I made was to ask my wife to marry me, my second wife.
Okay,
And
second one. Okay.
I'll tell you why. Because the consequences of the no were going to be horrible.
Okay.
Right? There was a lot at stake, I would say.
Okay.
And going back to vision.
Now, what was at stake? What was it? It wasn't.
Oh,
I don't want
well,
to get too personal, but I mean,
oh,
it's like,
what was at stake was being lonely for the rest of my life. Like that was the
okay,
downside,
all right.
right? The upside was, spending the rest of my life with somebody who I adored, who I admired, who I respected, and I thought was courageous and dynamic. That and starting a family. I didn't start a family with my first wife, and this was I don't want this was my second shot, right?
Yeah, right. Okay, so no
but
pressure.
but that was and the reason I bring that up is just because that's a tough ask for the fear of what could go wrong, right?
Right.
So that one's
Yeah.
right there. Um, what else? Like in a business context? Ask me the question again so I can refresh my buffer.
Sure. Yeah. What in the broad spectrum of decisions that you've obviously been made and had to make at various points in your life, what was the boldest decision? And it doesn't have to be business. The one you presented was perfect, but if you want to
Yeah.
do another one, what was
Yeah.
the boldest decision that you made during the course of your life, and what were the consequences?
I'm going to give you
It could be a decision you made that just didn't work out. That's fine.
yeah, yeah.
A lesson learned.
Yeah, I'm trying not to shortcut this answer, but it's I was having this conversation yesterday in the mastermind group about failure
Okay.
and how I don't this is a proposition. I'll put it that way. It's kind of a place to stand that failure doesn't really exist.
Okay.
Failure is something that we add to whatever happened. Right? I
Right.
think of it this way. You had an intention, right? You
Right.
had a goal in mind, you had an intention. You either got the outcome you were looking for or you got some other outcome. And then all the rest is what you add to it, right? How you
Okay.
feel about it. Oh, I'm devastated, all that, right? Or, oh, I let people down, or I let myself down, or I let my dad down, or all that other stuff is
Mhm.
just sort of the idiosyncratic stuff that we add to it. So, like I said, I'm trying not to weasel out of this answer, but
I was gonna
I
say,
can look,
yeah, that's great, but
I
what?
can look, well, like I said earlier about regrets, right? Like I don't see that any decision that I've made now, okay, now this is looking backwards. Like I don't see that any decision that I made was the one that I regret because
Okay.
I'm really happy where I'm at. I'm still alive.
Yeah. Right.
Every
Those,
decision, every decision that
you
I
wake up
made,
and you're not in a box, right?
I'm not at a, yeah, right. Not looking forward to those mornings.
Yeah.
But it really is a matter of every decision that I've made has got me to where I am now. Now, is my life perfect? No, right? I've had so many twists and turns in my life that, like I don't have a pension or a retirement account to speak of. I got a little bit put away, but not what I'm supposed to according to, all of that. So no, it's not perfect, right? But I guess, so even in the marriage example I gave, it was only from the past looking forward that it was bold, right? And so that is your question. There was getting into this business, right? So I made a transition from being in a technical, intellectual, analytical world to getting
Very
into the world of,
predictable and,
yeah, everything,
not that many people to worry about talking to all the
oh,
time.
and everybody is logical and rational and intelligent. There's like, it's very vanilla,
Yeah.
and that it's predictable.
Yeah, everybody
And
talks in monotone and they say hello and you go hello and
well,
goodbye.
that's the stereotype that you add to
Right.
it. um, uh, but and then, we were joking about this early on, is that what I would tell my engineering friends is, yeah, I went from I went over to the dark side, the people side,
Correct.
really. And as I mentioned earlier, that has become, I thought of it like, I kind of mastered the technical side. I am pretty darn capable to, figure things out, fix things. I understand the physical world quite well, given that was the world that I worked in as a geologist, the physical world, very
Right.
much so, the physical world, and by definition. And I had found early in my life through experiences that, whoa, people are mean, people are cruel, people say things that they don't mean. Why do they do that? Right. And so it was kind of like, well, I guess I'll stay over here with what's logical, what's practical, what's predictable, like that. And that kind of ran its course. And then this became the next great challenge was, okay, I guess I'll go over and try and figure people out, just like I figured out the physical world. And that's an endless supply of challenges there, because people are unpredictable, right?
Yes, they are.
And there are commonalities in how they're unpredictable.
So there's your technical side coming in. You categorize everything and you've got, you start looking at all the different types of people and you start organizing them in a way that you can understand them and then put them into boxes again. But I think you I kind of back up on that. My experience in my sales experience, I've worked a lot with engineers and at companies like Apple Computer and Microsoft and Hewlett Packard. It's all these, Stanford, Berkeley, MIT brainiacs that I work with all the time. And I love doing that because they were people just like you were saying, they're very predictable and the minute you came on as a salesperson, they would they'd shut you down.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So you had to be that way too. And so I got good at doing that, but it's,
Well, and that was the challenge for me, because I was, as soon as that, whatever that is that you're talking about, that salesy thing,
yeah,
um, you know, that was like, I had to get into that mode, you might say. Like what I had to do was break down the barrier, right? Like face the fear of, and the challenge of, it wasn't really it was the unknown. So a little bit of fear
sure.
in there, because
Yeah,
the unknown is scary, the uncertainty of it is, who do I need to be
yeah.
successful? Like what
That's
is
the
what is
crux of it.
my expression? What's my voice? Right? Like
Yeah,
in that world.
that's the
Because if
challenge.
I have to pretend to be somebody else, it ain't
And
gonna work.
you know what? That's what I did. I, I became this corporate guy and I created a cloak.
Mm,
And that was my biggest mistake over the years that I became what was under that cloak and people saw me both in my personal and my corporate. I became, and I lost who I was
Wow. Wow.
in that environment because I was working so much, and I'd come home and I'd struggle being, who am I? And it was more comfortable for me to be out working all the time because I could
Wow.
be under this cloak and not have to be me. And that's been my challenge. That's what I'm working on. In fact, still today, 65, and I'm still working on, you know, taking that cloak away because I did it for 40 years.
Yeah. No, that's so spot on. So
So
you
it's,
so consider that most people are going through life just like that.
yeah, that's why I see what you're doing is so valuable because you're not about taking these, creating new cultures necessarily. What I think from what I know about you and what I really love about you is that you have the ability, because you're technical and you've learned the people side, is now you can go in and help people who have tremendous intellect but have that reticence within them, to that fear that they're living under this cloak, to help them pull that cloak off and be themselves and be comfortable with who they are in their skin and take that initiative to step through that fear and actually add so much more value and enjoy, experience the joy that's there for them waiting. And I see you as that person to help them with that.
That's really good. I wish I had said that.
Well, that's how
No,
I
I
see
mean,
you, Jim.
I'm sort of joking, but you're spot on. I could not say that. That's what I'm looking for in people, is for them to be able to express that, because
Yeah,
each of us expressing, our natural selves, or, our, at some level, our created selves, right?
sure.
Taking that off and discovering who we are, discovering life, discovering being expressed in the world. That's what that world would be like. I don't know. Well, I
Well,
mean, it would be beautiful, right? It
yes,
would be, imagine everybody operating at the, sort of their full potential of joy and satisfaction and happiness.
sure. Yeah, love that. So, any last thoughts as we wrap up here?
Well, thank you. Really, thank you for this opportunity. This is a great conversation. I appreciate you
Oh,
inviting me to be
thank
part of it with
you.
you.
Very fun.
Yeah. So, my business is Effective Action Consulting. You mentioned that already. That's my paid gig. And then I'm involved, as I mentioned, in TEDx, or we've talked about, in TEDx Temecula. And
Yeah, I put up your book here. I'll show your book
oh,
again.
okay.
Elevate. It's on Amazon. You can pick one
That's an
up
interesting view.
on Amazon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a book of a few things that I wrote, and then some of my favorite quotations that open up doors. Going back to the doors analogy again, right?
Yeah.
Opens things up and has you see things differently, and you can look at all. I'm sure you have your own favorite quotations that you like, but just to really dwell in, what does that make available to me by seeing life from that perspective, and then seeing, all right, is there anything I can do about that? Like put into action as a result of that? Oh yeah.
I love what you put up on your Facebook. This is great. Yesterday is history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why they call it a present. I love that.
Isn't that great? One of my favorite movies, Kung Fu Panda. That's what that's from.
Absolutely. Love the humor is always important too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Gotta find the humor.
Well, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure speaking with you, and look forward to the next time.
All right. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate this.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.